Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on government Aliyah rights and benefits. We are recording this session on May 9th, 2021. This session is going to cover a couple of things, and here we go. The first, we're going to talk a little bit about Aliyah during COVID-19. We're going to talk about how COVID-19 affects Aliyah flight and processing. Then we'll get into the main part of this session, which is going to be how rights and benefits are determined and the time frame for each benefit. We'll talk a little bit first about COVID, as I mentioned. We are in I guess you can call a time of uncertainty, where pretty much daily things are changing, things are altering, government protocols and regulations are changing and being updated and not necessarily unified between all of the bodies that are dealing with whether it's approval to enter the country or the documents that one requires to get approval for Aliyah or visas, the flights themselves, flights being canceled or delayed. All of those factors come in when somebody's making Aliyah during this time. So any of the information that I'm giving on this presentation today is relevant for up till today. It is relevant for right now. And if you watch this in a couple of days, some things may potentially change. And therefore, hopefully, this won't change. But if it does, the best place to follow up on these regulations and on the information to make sure you have the accurate information is on our website. Our website is updated regularly. There is a Corona information page on our website. It is linked at the top of every page on our site. It says COVID-19. You click on it, and there you will find all of the COVID relevant information about entering Israel, flights, government offices, mainly post Aliyah, but not only. In addition, there are various landing pages and pages of information that are supplied by the pre-Aliyah team that discuss about the documents that you're required to bring, or anything that has changed in the process due to COVID. A word about the Aliyah flight and processing. While before COVID, we had multiple types of Aliyah flights, the designated flight, the charter flight, and the group flights. Right now, during COVID, we have one type of flight, or mainly one type of flight, which is, you can just call them clustered flights. It's random dates that are given by the airlines, dedicating seats to people making Aliyah. And you can end up on the plane by yourself. You can end up on the plane with another 10, 15, 30 olim. You'll really never know until you show up. Recently, we were able to get in 2 chartered flights, meaning flights full of olim. I don't know that we have an expectation to have another one of those before the end of the summer, but obviously all this information, as I said, will be supplied to you by your Aliyah advisors or on our website. If you have any questions about anything relating to COVID in Israel or regulations that are changing in Israel, you can, like I said, go to the COVID page on our website, or you can write to answers@nbn.org.il. That's mainly for post-Aliyah or government-related information. If you have questions about how your Aliyah or flight may be affected by COVID, or if you have any issues with your particular case, the best thing to do would be to email aliyah@nbn.org.il. If you already have an Aliyah advisor, then you should email them directly instead of the general email. So we're going to get into how benefits are determined, time frame for each benefit, and any of the information that is relevant to the session that you came to listen to. This is the list of Aliyah rights and benefits given by various government entities that we're going to discuss. And we'll get into each one of them individually and give a little bit more information. How benefits are determined. They're determined by multiple variables, as it mentions here: OLES status, previous stays in Israel, meaning how much time you've spent in Israel prior to making your Aliyah, the official Aliyah. The time frame for each benefit. Each benefit has a different time frame. How long from your Aliyah can you utilize this benefit? How long is it good for? And if there are any extensions, then anything that would be relevant to how long the extensions are and how you can get those extensions. If you already have your Aliyah approval, then you would know what your Aliyah status is. Sometimes status can change, whether you are eligible for benefits or not. When we get to, there is something called an Arnona benefit, which is a municipal tax benefit. That is a perfect example for something that is affected by status. If you are a katin chozer, a returning minor, you are not eligible for that particular benefit. So we'll see a few of these examples throughout this presentation. Other aspects that can potentially affect your benefits is if you are married to a veteran Oleh, somebody who made Aliyah in the past. If you're individual, if you're a family, if you're making split Aliyah, if you're a child of parents who made Aliyah within the last year, if you served in the army or did machal, which is volunteering for the army, or did shurut leumi, all these things can factor in. I'll try to cover as much of them as I can. If you have questions, like I said, if it's Aliyah related, aliyah@nbn.org.il, and if it is government advocacy related or protocol related, then answers@nbn.org.il. Okay, so how are benefits allocated? They're basically given all under one umbrella, which is Misrad Haklita, the Ministry of Aliyah and Integration, but they are given by separate entities. There are three main entities that give, government entities that give benefits. One is Misrad Haklita, as I mentioned, the Ministry of Aliyah and Integration. One is Misrad HaShikun, which is the Ministry of Housing. And one is the Tax Authority, which covers both the Tax Authority and the Customs Authority. And we're going to go into each individual office and the benefits that they give. So we're going to start with Misrad Haklita, Ministry of Aliyah and Integration. So the first benefit we're going to talk about is Sal Klita. Sal Klita is, the literal translation is an absorption basket. This is cash payments that you receive by Misrad Haklita, regardless of your financial state, for people that haven't spent too long in Israel prior to making Aliyah. It's money to help you settle in. I'm going to start with saying that benefits, Aliyah rights and benefits, are not something to make Aliyah for. If you're making Aliyah, it's nice to receive these things, but this is not a reason to make Aliyah. How do you determine if you're eligible for Sal Klita? As I mentioned before, as long as you haven't spent too much time prior to your Aliyah in Israel, you should be eligible for these benefits. There are three time frames that Misrad Haklita looks at in order to determine your benefits. They look at the 7 years prior to your Aliyah, and they look at how long you've spent in Israel during that time. If you've spent over 5 years in that time in Israel, then you essentially aren't eligible for most of the benefits in this presentation, other than very few. You don't even receive a Tudat Oleh, which is an Aliyah certificate. You receive a letter that has an Aliyah date on it that can be used for a few things. The next time frame they look at is 3 years within the 7 years prior to Aliyah. And if you've spent that much time collectively over the 7 years prior to Aliyah, then you have a limited amount of benefits. And then they look at 24 months within the 3 years prior to Aliyah. If you've spent 24 months within the 3 years prior to Aliyah in Israel, then again, you are limited in the amount of benefits you receive. If you don't fall into any of those categories, then you should receive your Tudat Oleh, your Tudat Zechuyot, and all the benefits that come with it. The calculation for Sal Klita, you see here a screenshot of our Sal Klita calculator. The truth is this is a little bit of an older calculator, but right now we link to Misrad Haklita's page that has a calculator on it that's a little more advanced. But you could see the criteria that they're looking at. Are you married? Are you single? Are you retired? Are you within a few years of retirement age? Do you have children? At what ages? They take all of those parameters together and they decide based on that how much money you should receive in Sal Klita payments. Okay, the allocation of payments are done in the following way. I'm talking mainly for Aliyah from abroad. If you make Aliyah from within Israel, it's a little different, but we have a web page about Sal Klita on our website, and you can find all the charts and all the information there. if your case is not exactly what I'm describing. If you're coming from abroad, making Aliyah on a flight, then you receive the first payment of Haklita in the airport at Misrad Haklita when you have your initial registration. After that, when you make your first appointment with Misrad Haklita, then you give them your bank details and they transfer the second part of the first payment into your account. After that, you receive 6 consecutive payments of equal amounts into your bank account. And again, the total sum of what you receive based on your family structure can be found on our website. In order to receive the Haklita payments, if you are married, you need to have a joint account at a bank. You can also have separate accounts if that's how you manage your money. But in order to get this benefit, you need to have a joint account with your spouse. In order to be able to receive the money into your account, you need to bring this and approve it to Misrad Haklita that both of your names are on the account. The Haklita payments are paid out over the first year of Aliyah. If you travel abroad, the payments stop. And if you return, you tell Misrad Haklita that you're back. And by doing so, they reinstate your payments. That is only if it's within the first year. If you come back just after the first year is over, then you essentially forfeit a portion of your payments if there are any payments still due to you. If you are in the army, you can receive the payments after the army instead of during your army service. But again, all of this information can be found on our Haklita page. I recommend you read that or go through it if you have any questions or are not sure how exactly to figure out the payments. Next, free healthcare. The healthcare system in Israel is very different than in other countries. Obviously, every country works it the way that they see fit. In Israel, in order to be part of the healthcare system, you have to be signed up through the National Insurance Institute to one of the 4 kupot cholim, the HMOs. Once you select which kupa you would like to be a member of, you are registered to that HMO, to that kupat cholim, and then you can receive the basic services. Once you finish with your registration, you go to the kupa and you apply for your membership card, and you can ask to pay privately for supplemental health insurances. They're relatively cheap in Israel, and it's worth having so that it can cover your medication, your doctor's visits, and everything else that you need. As long as you are not a former A1 temporary resident visa holder, you should be eligible for the free healthcare coverage for the first year. We're talking about the payments to Bituach Lomi, to the National Insurance Institute. Again, anything that is supplemental above the basic package is paid by you directly with Bituach Lomi. If you are without income or unemployed, then this is the case. If you have an employer, if you're receiving income, then the payments for Bituach Lomi come out of your payslip and are paid directly to Bituach Lomi through your payslip, which means essentially you're paying for healthcare in the first year. If at any point during the first year you stop having income or you quit your job or are fired, then you go back to having free healthcare for the following months until the end of your first year. I'm just going to make a note that this is not relevant to returning residents, to Toshavim Chozrim. They have a separate way to sign up for healthcare, and they potentially also have a waiting period that they would need to deal with in order to be eligible for services by Bituach Lomi. If you have questions about that, again, answers@nbn.org.il. We're happy to help. Sal Briut, I'm going to go back. Sal Briut means the basket, the health basket. There's a certain basket of services that are available at the basic level, and that is what this free health coverage covers. Again, supplementary coverage is through the kupa itself. That's it. Hebrew Ulpan. Hebrew Ulpan is basically Hebrew language classes. this is a perfect example of where the government is investing in your successful Klita, integration into the country, into the state of Israel. The more you put into this free benefit, the more you go to classes, learn, and try to pick it up, the easier it'll be for you to integrate, to talk to people on the street, to buy something at a convenience store. And it's definitely worth taking advantage of this benefit. This benefit is, as I said, free Hebrew studies. The Misrad Haklita allocates 500 hours for the study of the Hebrew language for each Oleh. The basic program is a government program which is set up in a way that it is 5 hours a day, 5 days a week for 5 months. It's a full intensive program that should get you a good foundation for the Hebrew language. Obviously, they're not necessarily every person can do that many hours a day for so many months in order to get through the Ulpan that they need, because people need to work or they need to do other things. And therefore, there are certain other options that you can utilize. There are private Ulpanim that will do evening classes or a couple times a week instead of 5. They'll do 2 or 3 times a week for a longer period of time. They do smaller classes instead of larger classes. So there are a lot more options when you're looking into the private Ulpanim. Right now, you also have the option of technically doing both. Right now, this is an option, but as I said in the beginning, some of these things change from time to time depending on when you want to make Aliyah. This is a directive that is relevant to the end of the year and can be renewed and may be renewed, but won't necessarily be renewed once 2022 comes around. But for right now, you could potentially do both. You can do 2 Ulpanim. You have a certain amount of years. Right now, it's up to 10 years to complete these Ulpanim in order to learn the Hebrew language. The location of the Ulpan that you are doing will be set by the address that is listed on your Teudat Zehut, on your Israeli identity card. If you're listed in Jerusalem, so it doesn't mean that you will go to the Ulpan that is closest to your house. It just means that you will be registered with an Ulpan that is in your general area, which is in or near Jerusalem, and you won't be traveling to Haifa. Okay. Continuing on. Subsidized higher education. This is a great benefit for people who are under the age of 30. If you are within 3 years from your Aliyah date, and if you are, as you can see down here on the bottom, if you're up to the age of 27 or up to the age of 30, you can take advantage of getting a subsidized degree, either a BA up to the age of 27 or an MA up to the age of 30. This means that the student authority, which is a part of Misrad Haklita, will essentially be paying for 1 full degree. What that means is you can go to a college or university that take the government tuition. There's set rates for government tuition, and this will be covered by the student authority. If you go to a different program, a private program that has higher tuition costs, so then they will cover the relative amount that they would have covered for a standard tuition program, and then you will have to fill in the rest by yourself. A great example for that is IDC in Herzliya, which is private and is relatively expensive compared to Israel, and that's something that you would have to fill in the cost by yourself. As I mentioned, this is a benefit by the student authority, and these programs have to be recognized by the student authority, but most of the programs in Israel are recognized by the student authority, and it's worth being in touch with them if you have any questions, or you can write to students@nbn.org.il, and we're happy to advise on the program that you're interested in joining. If you do Army service or Shurut Lomi, obviously the time frame that you can apply for this benefit gets extended. Basically, it's frozen during the time that you're in the Army or Shurut Lomi, but the age doesn't change. So technically, if you end your service and you're under the age of 27, you can do a bachelor's degree. If you're over the age of 27, you can only do an MA. I'm sorry, if you're under the age of 30, you could do both an MA or a BA. If you're under the age of 27, you could do a BA. There are no duplication of degrees, which means if you have a degree from abroad or you have a previous degree from Israel, they're not going to give you, for example, if you have a BA already, they're not going to cover the cost of another BA unless whatever degree you have is not something that translates to Israel, whether it's not a field that's translated to Israel or it's something that is very difficult to get a job in Israel. And in that kind of case, they may approve a degree for them to cover and subsidize a degree for you, but not necessarily. But that is the only situation in which they would potentially give you another of the same degree you have. But if you have a bachelor's degree, then it is worth looking into getting that recognized here by the Ministry of Education and going on to do a master's program here. Hang on. Okay, flight benefits. This is not really something that has to do with Misrad Haklita. This is a benefit that is given by the Jewish agency. This is an Aliyah flight. The Aliyah flight is covered by the Jewish agency. Once you are approved for Aliyah, you should receive it with an approval for your flight, which these days are being done mostly on El Al and United. In various other cases, they're done on other airlines, but those are very specific. But they're generally done on El Al and United. The flight options, as I mentioned, there are various dates that can be selected through your application or through your Aliyah advisor. We don't have currently, as I mentioned before, group flights or charter flights. Unless you're notified otherwise, you shouldn't expect those to be available. We potentially have a charter flight towards the end of the summer, but again, it's not something that we can fully plan at this point. But if you are interested, be in touch with your Aliyah advisor. The luggage allowance for Olim is currently 2 pieces of luggage at the weight of 50 pounds. This is 22 kilos. That is the basic luggage allowance. As far as purchasing additional pieces of luggage or going overweight, that information should be given to you by the airlines themselves. If you're interested in bringing an extra piece, then you should be in touch with the airline, whether it's El Al or United, and ask them for their costs or look at their website and make sure that you mention when you want to fly, so that they understand that it's relevant. The answer is relevant to the time that you're flying. Free transportation home. This is a benefit that is given by Misrad Haklita in the airport. After you're processing with them, they will provide free transportation to your home, regardless of how many people you are making Aliyah together, regardless of how many pieces of luggage you have with you. That doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be in a cab by yourself. It could be that you will be joined with other Olim in a larger vehicle or in a minibus or something like that. But you will be taken to your home and they will make sure that all of your luggage makes it as well. Okay, now we're done with the basic Misrad Haklita benefits. Now we're getting into the tax benefits. We're going to talk a little bit about this and then we'll go into housing. So income tax reduction. The income tax system in Israel works on a point system. Each credit point is worth 219 shekels, and the points are allocated to you based on a variety of factors. That could be being a resident of Israel gives you a certain amount of points. Whether you're male or female gives you a different set of points. If you have children under certain ages, you can be allocated points. If you live in the periphery of Israel, in the north, in the Negev, there are certain areas that allocate you additional points. There are all kinds of things that can add to this. If you've released from the army, if you are an Oleh Chadash, all these things add to the amount of points you get. This doesn't mean that you yourself are getting more money. It means that while you have income, and that income will technically be taxed by the income tax department, the amount of points you have will reduce the amount of tax that you pay. So if I take the amount of money each point is worth and the amount of points that Olim Chadashim get, and I'll go into that in a second, potentially over the 3.5 years that you have to receive this benefit, you can save approximately 20,000 shekels in income tax otherwise would have been paid. The way that it works is in the first year and a half of Aliyah, the first 18 months, you receive an additional 3 points to your general allotment of points. That is for the first 18 months. After that time, for the next 12 months, you receive an additional 2 points, meaning it goes down by 1 point. And you have 2 additional points to whatever points you have for other things. And then for the last 12 months, you have 1 additional point for being an Oleh Hadash. And after that, those Oleh Hadash points go away. According to them, you're no longer an Oleh Hadash. You are now fully Israeli and will pay the regular income tax. Periphery tax break, I mentioned before, if you live in various periphery areas, the north, in the Galil, Golan, in the Negev, in the south, certain yeshuvim, certain cities and towns may be eligible for a certain amount of points, and it's worth looking into that if you are interested in looking in those areas. Tax breaks on overseas income. This is something that we are asked about a lot, but truthfully, I can't give you a lot of information about this because this is something that requires a professional, an accountant, or a tax lawyer to give you the information about this. The tax authority has their own regulations as far as how they determine somebody is a resident of the state of Israel. But once you are seen as an Oleh Hadash by the tax authority, there are 10 years of a tax holiday where there are certain types of income that you are not required to report to the tax authority for income tax purposes. This is not relevant for Bituach Lomi that I mentioned before, for the National Insurance Institute payments that you pay based on the income that you get for healthcare or for other social services. This is only for income tax purposes for overseas income. Okay. As I mentioned, discuss this with an accountant, ask them exactly how it works in your situation. If you have investments or things abroad, if you have income from abroad while you're sitting in Israel, that's technically seen by the tax authority in Israel as money earned in Israel. And all these will have ramifications on how you are taxed when you're here. The customs benefit. The customs authority is a body that sits within the tax authority, and they allot you 3 shipments or lifts, or I can give a few examples of what a shipment or a lift would be considered in a second, that are customs tax free. So when you import these goods, you are paid in general, not as an Oleh Hadash, you're taxed whatever you're taxed, in addition to customs tax and VAT. As an Oleh Hadash, you have 3 opportunities to use these shipments or lifts and not pay the customs tax or VAT on eligible items. The eligible items are household items only, in addition to electric appliances, the main appliances like a fridge, like an oven, which one of each of those appliances can be tax-free. Can you bring a second oven? Yes, you can bring a second oven if you like to have 2 ovens, but you will be fully taxed on the second. That goes for washing machine, dryer, anything that is a major appliance. What's considered a shipment? So a shipment can be a 40-foot container, a 20-foot container full of your personal items, your household items, or it can be something that you order online. Let's say you order from Amazon, or you order a new laptop, or anything that is for your personal use. That delivery, that shipment can be used, you can use your eligibility for that. So for example, if you're buying an expensive laptop and the tax on it is going to be $100, $200, then you can ask to use one of your shipments for that, and then basically not pay the customs tax on that item. That is something that we see happening a lot more often than the lifts themselves, because in most cases, a family would bring a lift, and individuals or senior couples may not bring a lift because they don't need that many things. Or even if you do bring a lift, you most likely won't bring 3 containers full of things at separate dates. So the first one, you might bring your household items in a shipment, but afterwards you'll order things online, or you'll have things sent to you by family members or friends. And these are all things that you want to know that you can get tax-free. This is not, as I mentioned, this is household items only, or major appliances for your home. This is not for business items. This is not for items for the purpose of starting a business in Israel. There's a separate benefit for that, which is at a much lower amount. That's something you can find on our website. But since that's not relevant to most people, I'm not going to get into the details of that. As I mentioned, you have 3 years to take advantage of this benefit once you make Aliyah. If you are serving in the army or Shirut Leumi, or if you're in higher education, or if you spend over 6 consecutive months abroad during your eligibility period, then you will receive an extension on this time frame. So if, for example, you're here for a year and a half, and then you go into the army for a year, or Shirut Leumi for a year, then basically you add a year at the end of your eligibility period, and essentially you have 4 years to take advantage of this benefit. One shipment of clothes means that you can send a package or some sort of shipment. It could be a bunch of suitcases of your clothes or shoes prior to your Aliyah, or right after your Aliyah. It's within a certain period of time. You can see this on our website. Before or after your Aliyah, it's within 3 months before, I believe, and 1 month after, in which you are not taxed on those items arriving in Israel. If you are thinking of doing something to that effect, my recommendation is, instead of sending these things and hoping that they make it to Israel while you're not there, is pay for an additional piece of luggage on your Aliyah flight, because you will be with your luggage and there's no reason to ship it when you are not in the country. In addition to the customs benefit, there's also a car benefit. It's part of the same. Once you're eligible for one, you're eligible for the other if you're an Oleh Hadash. The car benefit is split into 2. There's a importing a car from abroad benefit, and there's a purchasing a brand new car in Israel from a dealership. The discount for Olim Chadashim, is, I'm not talking about hybrid cars or electric cars, which are becoming a lot more popular. I'm talking about regular cars. And the discount is, generally, Israelis will pay above the value of the car approximately 92-93% tax. The Olim Chadashim will pay approximately 75% tax above the value of the car. So it's a discount in the tax and not in the full value, including the tax. So you can see on our website also all of the numbers, and you could figure out how much it would be to pay for the taxes in order to import your car or purchase a car here. I would say that in most cases, it's not necessarily worth importing a car just because you have the car. It may be worth buying a secondhand car in Israel, or even purchasing a brand new car here with the benefit. The reason I say that is because the importing process is complicated, and there are a lot of documents that you need to get, and anything that goes wrong along the way, whether it's the Carfax on the car changing, whether it's anything that happens regarding insurance claims during the shipment of the car, or any of those scenarios that can happen, can delay or add costs to the shipment of the car. And it might not, again, be worth it, because you may be able to find a similar car in Israel, secondhand from somebody else that you don't have any of the limitations on. When you import a car as an Oleh Hadash or purchase a brand new car here, you have a few limitations, which are that only you or your spouse can drive the car for 4 years from when you receive the car in Israel. That's limiting to certain people when they want to allow their parents to pick up their kids from school, or when they want their children to drive them to a doctor's appointment, or just lending your friend or neighbor your car, or your sibling your car. All of those things are not possible because you are the only people who can drive the car. If you have children that have licenses and can technically drive, you need to request special approval for them to be able to drive the car, and it's only given in case you live at the same address and there's a reason for them to be driving your car. So again, if you're not sure if you should or shouldn't import the car, I recommend two things. One, asking online, going on a Facebook group, the Nefesh B'Nefesh community Facebook group, or Making Aliyah This Year group, which both have Olim dealing with the same questions, or both hesitant about whether they should bring a car or not. And the second is you can be in touch with us and ask us what we think about your specific car. I generally find that the only cars that are worth bringing here and importing with this benefit are either high-end cars or 8-seater minivans, which you can't really find here so much. Maybe recently they've been a little more accessible, but they're not really found here so often. In order to use this benefit, you have to have a valid Israeli driver's license within a year of your making Aliyah, which is not a problem because converting your driver's license is relatively simple. But if you do not present that license by the end of your first year, then you may be taxed the amount that you were reduced in the first place, and that could become a problem for you. Passport to passport is something we don't see often, but from time to time becomes available. Passport to passport means if somebody in Oleh Hadash uses their benefit in order to purchase a car or to bring a car, import a car to the country, they can sell that to another Oleh Hadash that has his own eligibility. And then basically you start the 4-year restriction again, but you didn't have to deal with the taxes. Okay? Hybrid cars, as I mentioned before, that's not part of this benefit. They have their own calculation. I'm not going to get into it. I don't have all of the numbers. The tax authority should be able to give you those numbers, but the basics of it are the higher end the hybrid car is, or the electric car is, the more it is taxed, and the lower end or the smaller or more simple the car is, the less you'll pay in taxes on that car. The conversion of a foreign driver's license doesn't have to do with the tax authority, but I figured this is a good place to put it in. The Misrad Rishui, which is basically the DMV here in Israel, the driving bureau, gives sort of a benefit for Olim Chadashim to convert their driver's license instead of starting from scratch. If you have 5 years from your date of Aliyah in order to convert your driver's license. There are 2 processes in which you can convert your license. One is relevant for anybody who has proof of having a license and driving for over 5 years prior to Aliyah, and the other is for people who have less than 5 years driving prior to Aliyah. Obviously, the more driving history you have, the less complicated it is. And that could be found on our website on the driver's license conversion page. The license that you want to convert must be issued before your Aliyah date. That makes sense. The driver's license must be valid at the time of conversion, which we see from time to time, especially during COVID, that this can sometimes be a problem because DMVs are closed and you couldn't renew your license. You need to make sure you have proof of having 5 years or whatever amount of time being licensed abroad in order to be able to go into starting with any of these processes. My recommendation is before you get on the Aliyah flight, make sure to go to your DMV and request a full driving history. If you go in person or if you email them, it's possible that they'll send it to you or give it to you on the spot, maybe even for free. But once you get to Israel, certain DMVs and certain states have the option of printing it online and others don't have that option. And then it would basically be up to you to figure out a way to get the driving history here. The full driver's license, not probationary, not temporary, which means if you receive a license before you get here, but it's a limited license, whether you're a new driver and you're limited to certain times of driving only during the day, not at night, not driving on highways, or all kinds of different restrictions that you may have on your license, those are not convertible. The process for less than 5 years with a full local driver's license is that you would need to do, I'm sorry, there's something missing here, but you'd need to do an eye exam, a theory test, which is a written test, which is not mentioned here, and a short driving test. The procedure for somebody over 5 years with a full local driver's license from abroad is there's pretty much an automatic conversion. I'm sorry, the little information here is incorrect. You do need to do an eye exam for anybody, not only over the age of 70. Everybody needs to do an eye exam and have your picture taken. But yes, there is no need to do a driving test or a theory test if you have proof of over 5 years of a driver's license. And as I mentioned again, it is important to issue a DMV record for your full driving history before you make Aliyah so that you don't get stuck once you get here. Housing benefits, just a couple more, and then we will be finished. The housing benefits are Arnona. I mentioned this in the beginning. I'm sorry, 1 second. My computer just went funny. Okay. The Arnona benefit is a municipal tax discount. This is up to 90%. It's between 70 to 90% discount on your property, on whether you're renting or you own. This is something in Arnona, the municipal tax is something that is paid by the person living in the property. So if you're renting, you're still eligible, you're still required to pay this amount to the local council or the municipality. So this discount of up to 90% is up to 100 square meters of your home. So if you have a home that is up to 100 square meters, then it'll be a discount on the full property. And if you have a house or apartment that are larger than 100 meters, so the discount is on the first 100 meters, and the additional space, you'll have to pay the full amount. I'm sorry, hang on. Okay. The discount is determined by the local municipality. Okay, so as I said, between 70 to 90%, each municipality will decide which, how much they're going to give you as a discount. Okay, eligibility, as I mentioned in the beginning of the session, you may or may not remember, I mentioned that katinim chozrim, a katin chozer is a returning minor, somebody who acquired citizenship here when they were under the age of 14, so they were born here or made Aliyah as a minor and left the country up till the age of 14 and came back to Israel over the age of 17 with at least 4 years between. They are not eligible for this discount. If you are a couple and one of you is a katin chozer and one of you is an oleh chadash or an ezrach oleh or any of the other aliyah statuses and you're not sure how to proceed, then just email us at answers@nbn.org.il and we're happy to advise. The time frame for this benefit is you receive it for a 12-month period within the first 2 years of aliyah. So it doesn't necessarily have to start with the first month of your aliyah or the second month. Once you start this benefit, it goes for 12 months within the first 2 years. If you move during the first year, for example, when you are using this benefit, you can request a letter from the municipality that you're leaving about the amount of months that you received the discount so that the next municipality you move to can give you what is left of your benefit if you're within the first 2 years. Something that's very important to mention is that in order to get this benefit, you need a contract, either a deed that you purchased the home or a contract of rental that is at least 12 months. If you have a contract for a short-term rental, then you'll either have to use the benefit after that when you get a full-time rental for at least a year, or you'll need to get a contract that is for a year that is amendable throughout the period of time that you are renting the home. Rental assistance is given by the housing ministry. The time frame for this benefit is from you receive this benefit from the 8th month of your aliyah through the end of the 5th year of aliyah. The payments are allocated as you can see in the chart over here. So it depends if you're a single or a family or a single parent family. And the first few months you receive what it says in the first column, and then going on to the second year and so on, the payments either stay the same or go down. So I'll take a single as an example. The months 8 till 12 are 223 shekels a month, every month. And from the second year, meaning from the 13th month and on, it's 400 shekels a month. through the end of the 4th year, and the 5th year is 89 shekels a month. So all in all, it comes to a lot of money. These payments can stop if you change your bank account information, if you get married or change your marital status throughout this period of time, if you travel abroad for over 2 months at a time, any of these things, finishing army service, or any of these things and a few other scenarios can stop payments. It's important to track your account and make sure you're receiving these payments. If you are receiving these payments, or sorry, if you're not receiving these payments, it's important to be in touch with us or with the ministry in order to reinstate the payments right away so that you don't miss out on payments, because there are only a certain amount of months that they'll give you retroactive once the payments are stopped. For lone soldiers, a lone Bnot Shirut national service, you receive a different amount, slightly different from the amounts that are in this chart. And when your service is over, you need to reinstate your payments. They stop, and they need to be reinstated when you're within your 5 years of Aliyah. And then again, they end at the end of your 5th year of Aliyah. Once that is over, the 5th year, then you have to go and reinstate those payments again for an extension. So if you've served for 1 year or 2 years, you'll get that amount of time as an extension and just continue receiving payments of 400 shekels per month for that amount of time that you've served after you finished your 5 years of Aliyah. Again, if any of this is confusing or you have questions about this, please email us at answers@nbn.org.il. The mortgage benefit. So the mortgage benefit is an eligibility given by the country, by the state, for Olim Chadashim by getting what's called a Teudat Zechuyot, an eligibility certificate. This is something done by a mortgage banker. Once they issue this Teudat Zechuyot, they give you the information of how much of this mortgage benefit you're eligible for. It's approximately around 150,000 shekels of your mortgage can be this government mandated amount. In addition, you also receive it at a certain rate that is set by the government that sometimes can be a little bit lower than what is offered in the market. And also it depends obviously on the amount of money you want to take and the amount of years you want to spread the payments. The payments this specific amount of money that you receive from the government can be split between 20 to 28 years spread. Even if you get most of your mortgage in a shorter time span, this amount can be spread over 20 to 28 years. This is the longest benefit that is given by the Misrad, Haklita or the Ministry of Housing. It's for 15 years. Even sometimes when you are past the amount of time that you are eligible for this benefit, they sometimes will still give it to you if you appeal a few months past this date. And therefore, this is something that is good for many years, and some people take advantage of it. It's not always worth using, and it's worth discussing this with a mortgage broker who is familiar with the Zechuyot process, with this eligibility process, before you get into using this benefit. Thank you everybody for listening. I hope this was informative. I hope this gave you answers to a lot of the questions that you have. Again, if you have any questions that are Aliyah related or specific to your Aliyah process, you can email aliyah@nbn.org.il. Or like I said before, if you already have an Aliyah advisor, then you should email them directly instead of the division. And if you have questions that are government related or rights and benefits related, then feel free to email us at answers@nbn.org.il. And I wish you all a pleasant day.